Welcome to Crossdressing Stories. Here, we share personal stories, celebrate self-expression. If you're on your own journey or simply curious, you've found your community. Subscribe and join the conversation.
Alex Valerius, 24, was an unfinished symphony. He possessed the soul of a concert pianist, but the hands of a bartender with a bank account to match. His dream of studying at a prestigious music conservatory had shattered along with his father's company 2 years prior. Now he lived in a cramped, unfamiliar apartment, estranged from the powerful, distant father he saw only a few times a year. That father was Richard Valerius, an industrial titan, a man who had built Valerius Industries through sheer force of will. But the titan was dying. A rare degenerative disease, the same one that had claimed Alex's grandfather, was consuming Richard, leaving him with mere months. One afternoon, Alex was summoned to his father's glass and steel penthouse. Richard looked gaunt, a ghost of his former self, but his eyes still burned with a ruthless fire. "The company is on the brink," Richard rasped, his voice rough. "My biggest competitor, Isabel Rossi of Rossi Corp., smells blood. She's a shark, and she knows I'm bleeding. She'll attempt a hostile takeover, and she'll tear my family's legacy to shreds." "What can I do?" Alex asked, feeling utterly useless. "Rossi has a weakness," Richard said, a glint of cunning in his eyes. "She's an extreme matriarchist. She believes men are inherently incompetent, driven by ego, and incapable of subtlety in business. She refuses to seriously engage with male partners. She will only negotiate a friendly merger, one that would save our company, with someone she respects. A woman." Alex stared at his father, confusion clouding his features. "You don't have a daughter?" "No," Richard said, his voice turning glacial. "But I have something better. You have your mother's bone structure. You are slender. You are a blank slate. For the next 3 months, you will become Alexa Valerius, my daughter. My reclusive heiress, educated in Europe and now ready to take the reins. You will charm Isabel Rossi. You will negotiate the merger. You will save this company." "That's the most insane thing I've ever heard," Alex stammered. "No, absolutely not." Richard coughed violently, his body racked with tremors. "Do you think you have a choice?" he wheezed, his voice laced with venom. "You're a failed musician living on tips. I'm giving you a chance to do something meaningful with your life. To honor my legacy." He paused, his gaze locking onto Alex. "And if you refuse, I will ensure you never touch a piano again. I will blacklist you from every venue, every school. I made you, Alex. I can certainly unmake you." The architect of Alex's transformation was a woman known only as the Alchemist. She was a legend in the shadowy world of high-stakes corporate espionage and reputation management, a woman who could turn a scandal into a triumph and, apparently, a son into a daughter. Richard had spared no expense. Alex's new life began in a secluded, high-tech facility that felt like a cross between a luxury spa and a secret government lab. The Alchemist was a woman of indeterminate age with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She didn't deal in pleasantries. "Your father's plan is crude," she said on their first meeting, her voice a low, precise murmur. "He wants a puppet. I create a person. For Alexa to be believable, you must believe in her. This will not be a costume. It will be an inhabitation." The process was brutally efficient. Alex's slightly too long musician's hair was styled and shaped, then augmented with expertly applied, semi-permanent extensions, creating a cascade of dark, wavy hair that felt heavy and foreign against his back. His body was waxed, his eyebrows shaped, his skin subjected to a regimen of treatments that left it unnaturally smooth. He spent hours each day with a deportment coach, learning a new way to walk, to sit, to gesture. The most grueling sessions were with a vocal coach who, through a series of painful and frustrating exercises, taught him to speak in a higher, softer register, a convincing female voice that felt like a stranger's in his own throat. But the Alchemist's methods went beyond the physical. She was a psychologist. She spent hours talking to him, not as Alex, but as if she were talking to the nascent Alexa. "What are Alexa's fears?" she would ask. "What does she dream of? What is the music she hears in her soul? She was building a psychological profile, a complete backstory. Alexa was not just a disguise, she was a fully formed identity. Reclusive, intelligent, with a passion for art and a quiet, steely resolve she inherited from her father. Her greatest passion, the Alchemist decided, was the cello, a subtle, psychological nod to Alex's own musical soul, but transposed into a more suitably feminine key. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of training, the Alchemist introduced a new element. "Your father's disease is genetic," she stated, her tone clinical. "It is passed down through the male line. Valerius men are a dying breed. Alexa, as a woman, would be free from that curse. She is not just the future of the company. She is the future of the bloodline. That is your strength. That is your power over Isabel Rossi." The idea was chilling in its brilliance. It wasn't just a business proposition anymore. It was a story of biological destiny. The final, most invasive part of the transformation was hormonal. To be truly convincing, your body chemistry must align with the role, the Alchemist had explained. A discreet doctor began a low-dose regimen of estrogen and testosterone blockers. It is temporary, reversible, and will soften your features, suppress beard growth, and create a more subtle, feminine emotional landscape. It will make the inhabitation easier. Alex, trapped and powerless, had no choice but to agree. As the weeks went by, he felt the changes. His skin grew softer. His emotions felt closer to the surface, more fluid. He would look in the mirror at the stranger with the soft skin, the dark, flowing hair, and the sad, expressive eyes, and he would feel a profound sense of dislocation. He was becoming a work of art, a masterpiece of deception. But he was also becoming a ghost in his own body. After 2 months of intensive, isolated training, it was time for Alexa to make her debut. The meeting with Isabel Rossi was arranged not in a sterile boardroom, but at a private, high-end art gallery, neutral ground, chosen by the Alchemist to play to Alexa's manufactured background. Alex stood in front of a full-length mirror, his heart pounding a frantic, syncopated rhythm. The person looking back was a stranger. Alexa Valerius was tall and slender, dressed in a sophisticated, dark blue dress that was elegant but severe. Her long, dark hair was pulled back in a simple chignon, and her makeup was minimal, emphasizing her large, intelligent eyes, her mother's eyes. She looked poised, powerful, and completely, terrifyingly real. "Remember who you are," the Alchemist's voice said through a tiny, invisible earpiece. "You are the future. You are the survivor." Isabel Rossi was waiting for them in a gallery filled with stark, modernist sculptures. She was a woman in her late 50s, impeccably dressed in a sharp, white suit, her silver hair cut in a severe, geometric bob. She radiated an aura of pure, unapologetic power. Her eyes, when they landed on Alexa, were like chips of obsidian, sharp, cold, and missing nothing. "Miss Valerius," Rossi said, her voice a low, cultured purr. "I have been hearing whispers about you for years. The reclusive daughter. I was beginning to think you were a myth." "Some myths are worth the wait, Mrs. Rossi," Alex replied, and the voice that came out was Alexa's, cool, smooth, and steady. He was shocked by his own composure. The Alchemist's training was deeply ingrained. They walked through the gallery, making small talk about the art. Rossi was testing him, dropping names of obscure artists, probing for weaknesses in her supposed European education. But the Alchemist had been thorough. Alex, drawing on his own genuine knowledge of art history, parried every question with an ease that seemed to impress the older woman. "Your father is a brute," Rossi stated bluntly, stopping in front of a twisted metal sculpture. "He builds his empire with a hammer. It lacks finesse." "My father is a man of his generation," Alex replied, his voice carefully neutral. "He built a strong foundation. My job is to design the building that will stand upon it. And I prefer to use more modern tools." A flicker of something respect? Interest crossed Rossi's face. "And what tools are those?" "Collaboration," Alex said, looking her directly in the eye. "Vision. And an understanding that the strongest structures are not always the most aggressive. Sometimes, they're the most adaptable." He felt the alchemist's voice in his ear. Perfect. Now, the biological imperative. He took a small, calculated breath. My father is also a dying man, Mrs. Rossi. As was his father before him. The Valerius men have a genetic flaw. A flaw that, as a woman, I am fortunate not to have inherited. The shot hit its mark. He saw a sudden, intense gleam in Rossi's eyes. This was not just a potential business partner. This was the embodiment of her entire worldview. A strong, intelligent woman, free from the inherent flaws of her male lineage, poised to take power. It seems we may have more to discuss, Miss Valerius, Isabel Rossi said, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. Much more. The negotiations began in earnest. The meetings were a high-stakes chess game, with Alexa and Isabel as the two opposing queens. Alex, to his profound surprise, found he was good at this. The alchemist's training, combined with his own musician's sense of timing and improvisation, made him a formidable negotiator. He was calm, analytical, and the persona of Alexa gave him a strange, detached confidence he had never possessed as himself. But the double life was taking a toll. The low-dose hormones were making him more emotionally volatile, and the constant performance was mentally exhausting. His only solace was the grand piano in the penthouse. Late at night, when the staff was gone, he would sit and play, not the cello pieces of Alexa's backstory, but the passionate, complex sonatas of his own soul. It was the only time he felt like himself. One evening, he was lost in a particularly difficult Rachmaninoff prelude, his fingers flying across the keys, when he felt a presence behind him. He stopped abruptly, his heart seizing with panic. A young man was standing in the doorway of the living room. He was tall, with kind, intelligent eyes and the thoughtful, slightly rumpled air of an academic. Alex had never seen him before. "I'm so sorry," the young man said, his voice soft. "I didn't mean to intrude." The music was extraordinary. "I'm Leo. Leo Rossi." The name hit Alex like a physical blow. "Rossi, you're Isabel's son?" Alex asked, his Alexa voice wavering for the first time. "Her nephew, actually," Leo corrected him with a small, wry smile. "I'm a musicologist. My aunt lets me use her archives for my research. I was working late. I thought no one was here." He looked at the piano, his eyes filled with a genuine, unfeigned admiration. "You play with such anger, such passion." "It's not how I would have expected Alexa Valerius to play." The blood ran cold in Alex's veins. Leo had not just heard the music, he had understood it. He had heard Alex, not Alexa. "It's a difficult piece," Alex said, trying to regain his composure. "It is," Leo agreed. "And you play it with the phrasing of a concert pianist. It reminds me of a young performer I heard a few years ago, before he disappeared. A young man named Alex Valerius." The silence in the room was absolute. Alex stared at Leo, his mind racing. This was not part of the plan. Leo wasn't supposed to exist. The alchemist had never mentioned him. Leo's gaze was not accusatory. It was searching, filled with a quiet, scholarly curiosity. "My aunt believes you are the future," he said slowly. "A woman destined to lead, free from the flaws of your father. But I hear that music, and I hear a story of a man's ambition, a man's grief." He took a hesitant step closer. "Who are you, really?" Before Alex could answer, he heard the soft chime of the private elevator. Isabel Rossi was on her way up. Panic, cold and sharp, seized him. "You can't be here," Alex hissed, his voice dropping back into a desperate, masculine whisper. "She can't find you here with me." Leo's eyes widened, a look of dawning understanding on his face. He wasn't just a threat to the negotiation. He was a threat to Alex's very existence. "The archives are on the sublevel. Use the service stairs," Alex whispered urgently, pushing Leo towards a discreet door he knew led to a back corridor. "Go. Now." Leo hesitated for a fraction of a second, his eyes filled with a million unasked questions. Then he nodded and disappeared through the door just as the main elevator doors slid open. Isabel Rossi swept into the room, her presence immediately filling the space. "Still working, Alexa?" she asked, her sharp eyes scanning the room. "Diligence is an admirable quality." Just reviewing some details for tomorrow's meeting, Alex replied, his heart still hammering against his ribs. He forced himself to be Alexa, calm, composed, in control. But something had shifted. Leo's appearance was a catastrophic, unforeseen variable. He was a loose thread that could unravel the entire, meticulously woven tapestry of deception. And worse, he had seen something real. He had heard Alex's soul in the music. Alex contacted the Alchemist the next morning via their encrypted channel, his message a single, frantic line: "Rossi has a nephew. He knows." The Alchemist's reply was swift and cold. "Variables can be controlled. Continue the mission. I will handle the nephew." The words were meant to be reassuring, but they sent a chill down Alex's spine. He had no idea what handling Leo meant in the Alchemist's world, but he knew it wouldn't be pleasant. He met Leo for coffee a few days later, a meeting ostensibly to discuss a minor clause in the merger agreement that involved a charitable arts foundation. It was a public place, chosen by Alex, a small cafe where he hoped they could talk. "I won't expose you," Leo said the moment they sat down, his voice low and sincere. "I don't care about the merger. But I am concerned. My aunt is a formidable woman. And your father, from what I know of him, he is not a man who inspires loyalty through kindness. You are caught between two very powerful forces. Are you safe?" The genuine concern in Leo's eyes was more disarming than any threat. For the first time in months, someone was asking about his well-being, not Alexa's. "I'm fine," Alex lied, the Alexa persona a shield. "You must have been mistaken about the music." "Was I?" Leo asked softly, his gaze steady. "The piece you were playing. Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor. It's often called The Bells of Moscow. It's a piece about exile, about a profound sense of loss and longing for a home you can never return to. It's not a piece one plays lightly." Alex felt his composure beginning to crack. Leo wasn't just a musicologist, he was a reader of souls. He saw the grief, the loss, the exile Alex felt from his own life. "Whoever you are," Leo continued, "you are in danger. And not just from them." He glanced around the cafe, a flicker of something, fear? Paranoia, in his eyes. "I think we're being watched." Before Alex could respond, Leo's phone buzzed. He looked at the message, and the color drained from his face. "I have to go," he said abruptly, his voice tight. "My research grant. There's a problem with the university. An anonymous complaint has been filed against my work. My fellowship is being suspended." He stood up, his eyes locking with Alex's. "This is a warning," he whispered. "To me. And to you. Be careful." He turned and walked quickly out of the cafe, leaving Alex sitting there, a cold knot of dread tightening in his stomach. The Alchemist had handled the nephew. She was sending a message, no one was beyond her reach. The gilded cage had just become a minefield. Leo's warning and the chilling efficiency of the Alchemist's retaliation shifted something fundamental in Alex. His fear began to curdle into a slow-burning anger. He was not just a pawn in his father's game anymore. He was a prisoner, and Leo, an innocent bystander, had just been caught in the crossfire. He started digging. At night, after the performance of being Alexa was done, he would retreat to his room and become a different kind of ghost. Using the high-level access his father had given him, he began to explore the dark, forgotten corners of the Valerius industry servers. He didn't know what he was looking for, but he was driven by a desperate need to find a weapon, a piece of leverage that could free him from the Alchemist's invisible leash. He found it in a deeply encrypted folder in his father's private archives, a folder labeled simply Gen P1. Inside was not business data, but medical records, genetic analyses, and a series of private journal entries from his grandfather, the first Richard Valerius. As Alex read, a new, more horrifying story began to unfold. The rare degenerative disease that had killed his grandfather and was now killing his father was not what it seemed. It wasn't just a random, cruel twist of genetic fate. His grandfather, a brilliant but ruthless scientist, had been a pioneer in genetic engineering in his youth. The journal entries, written in a cramped, paranoid script, spoke of a Prometheus project, a secret, unsanctioned experiment to enhance his own genetic code, to eliminate weaknesses and amplify strength and intelligence. But the experiment had gone horribly wrong. He had not perfected his DNA, he had corrupted it. He had created a genetic time bomb, a manufactured disease that was now being passed down through the male line, a legacy not of power, but of self-inflicted decay. The most chilling discovery was a single, heavily redacted medical file. It belonged to his mother, and it contained a secret she had apparently taken to her grave. Before she had Alex, she had been pregnant with another child, a daughter. The fetus, the note said, had shown the same genetic markers for the Valerius disease. According to the file, the pregnancy had ended in a late-term miscarriage. A cold, horrifying thought began to form in Alex's mind. A thought so monstrous he tried to push it away. The disease was passed through the male line. His grandfather's journals had been explicit. A daughter should have been immune. He kept digging, hacking into old hospital records, cross-referencing dates and doctors. And then he found it. An unredacted nurse's log from the night of the supposed miscarriage. The entry was brief, but it changed everything. Infant female, full term, delivered live. Dr. Valerius, Sr., present. Infant immediately transferred to private Valerius medical facility. Mother informed of stillbirth. The baby hadn't died. His sister, his older sister, had been born alive. And his grandfather, and by extension his father, had covered it up. They had stolen a child and lied to their own wife and mother. But why? He went back to his grandfather's paranoid journals, reading them now with this new, terrible knowledge. And he found the final, devastating entry. The flaw is unexpected. It is not confined to the Y chromosome as I theorized. It is dominant. Carried by both sexes. The girl is afflicted. My legacy is not just decay. It is a poison I have passed to all my children. I have no choice. The Valerius name must be protected. The flawed branch must be pruned. Alex felt the room spin. His sister hadn't just been stolen. She had been pruned. Hidden away. Disappeared. He was not his father's only child. He was just the only one who had been allowed to exist. And the reason for his own transformation, the cold, calculating logic of turning him into a daughter, suddenly became terrifyingly clear. This wasn't the first time his father had tried to create a Valerius daughter to solve a problem. It was just the first time he had to build one from scratch. The discovery of his lost sister, a ghost in the Valerius family machine, recontextualized everything. Alex's mission was no longer about self-preservation. It was about justice. It was about finding the truth for the mother who had died grieving a child she never knew she'd lost, and for the sister who had been erased before she even had a name. He knew he couldn't confront his father directly. He was still a prisoner, watched at all times. But he had one potential, terrifying ally, the Alchemist. She was the architect of his deception, but she was also a creature of logic and information. She valued truth, even if only as a tool. He requested an in-person meeting, a high-risk move. They met in a safe room within the facility, a sterile white cube designed to be impervious to all forms of surveillance. The mission is proceeding ahead of schedule. An unscheduled meeting is a breach of protocol, the Alchemist said, her tone sharp. The mission has changed, Alex replied, his Alexa voice gone, replaced by his own, steady and cold. He slid a data tablet across the white table. On the screen was the unredacted nurse's log. You told me you create a person, not a puppet. You build your creations on a foundation of truth. But the foundation of Alexa Valerius is a lie. Not the one I'm performing, but a much older, darker one. The Alchemist picked up the tablet. Her eyes scanned the log entry, her expression utterly unreadable. She was silent for a long, tense moment. Alex watched her, his heart pounding. This was the biggest gamble of his life. She could erase this information, and him, without a second thought. Your father's instructions were to create a Valerius daughter to secure a merger, she said, her voice a low, analytical hum. He did not specify that she had to be fictional. Alex stared at her. What are you saying? I am saying, the Alchemist replied, a flicker of something new, a spark of pure, intellectual challenge in her eyes, that your father's solution is crude. He is trying to build a new piece to solve a problem when a far superior, original piece may already exist on the board. She looked at him. My contract is with Richard Valerius. My objective is the preservation of the Valerius legacy. Your discovery does not threaten the objective. It merely introduces a more elegant path to achieving it. She stood up. The parameters of the mission have been updated. Your role is no longer to be Alexa. Your role is to help me find her. A wave of dizzying, disbelieving hope washed over Alex. He had come here expecting a confrontation and had found an unexpected, powerful co-conspirator. Why? He asked, needing to understand. Why would you help me? The alchemist turned, her face a mask of cold, professional logic. Your father is dying. Isabel Rossi is a temporary variable. Your lost sister, if she exists, is the true Valerius heir. She is free from the genetic curse that is destroying the men. She is the legacy. My loyalty is not to the client. My loyalty is to the mission. She paused, a rare, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. And besides, this is a far more interesting problem to solve. The mission was now a covert operation, running in the shadows of the primary deception. By day, Alex continued to play the part of Alexa, flawlessly navigating the final stages of the merger negotiation with Isabel Rossi. By night, he and the alchemist became digital archaeologists, hunting for the ghost of his sister. The alchemist, with her vast resources, was able to bypass legal and bureaucratic firewalls with terrifying ease. They sifted through decades of sealed adoption records, private medical files, and financial transactions. It was like searching for a single grain of sand on an infinite beach. The private Valerius medical facility, mentioned in the nurse's log, had been a shell, a place that existed on paper for a few years and then vanished. But the alchemist was relentless. She traced the doctors, the nurses, the money. And she found a thread. A series of large, anonymous payments made from a Valerius trust to a small, exclusive orphanage in rural Switzerland, an institution known for its discretion. The payments continued for 18 years, and then they stopped. She was raised there, the alchemist concluded. Then, on her 18th birthday, she was given a final lump sum and released. She was cut loose. Erased. Now they had a new, colder trail to follow. A young woman, raised in isolation, given a new name and a substantial, but not infinite amount of money, let loose upon the world. Alex, meanwhile, found his interactions with Isabel Rossi becoming increasingly complex. The merger was nearly a done deal, but his relationship with Isabel was evolving beyond business. The matriarch seemed to see in Alexa a kindred spirit, a protégé. She would invite him for private dinners, sharing stories of her own ruthless climb to the top, offering advice, seeing in Alexa the daughter she never had. The irony was crushing. Alex was succeeding, but his success was built on a lie that was becoming more and more entangled with a terrible truth. He was playing the part of a lost daughter while actively searching for a real one. His secret conversations with Leo also continued. Leo, whose research fellowship had been quietly reinstated by the alchemist, became his only emotional outlet. They would meet in quiet, out-of-the-way places, and Alex would share the frustrating, piecemeal progress of his search. It's like she doesn't exist, Alex said one afternoon, the strain evident in his voice. We have her adoption name, Helena, but after she left the orphanage, she vanished. No credit cards, no social security, no digital footprint. It's like she knew someone might come looking for her. Or she just wanted to be free, Leo suggested gently. Imagine that life. Raised in an institution, knowing you're different, but not why. Maybe she just wanted to disappear and start over. Leo's words were meant to be comforting, but they filled Alex with a new dread. What if his sister didn't want to be found? What if, in searching for her, he was not a rescuer, but a threat, dragging her back into the toxic orbit of the family that had discarded her? The breakthrough came from an unexpected direction. The alchemist, having exhausted all digital avenues, had turned to a more old-fashioned form of espionage. She had put a quiet, physical tail on Richard Valerius. Your father has a routine, she reported to Alex one evening, her voice a low hum of excitement. Every Thursday, his driver takes him to a small, private long-term care facility on the outskirts of the city. He is not registered as a patient. He goes to visit one. She sent Alex the file. The patient's name was listed as Helena Dubois. She had been admitted 5 years ago. Her medical diagnosis, the same rare, degenerative Valerius genetic disease. Her legal guardian and sole benefactor, the man who paid for her care and was her only visitor, Richard Valerius. Alex stared at the screen, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place with a horrifying, sickening finality. His grandfather hadn't pruned the branch. He had locked it away. And his father, for all these years, had been the secret jailer. His sister wasn't lost. She was a prisoner, just like him. The long-term care facility was a place of hushed corridors and the antiseptic smell of quiet despair. On the pretense of finalizing a detail for a philanthropic clause in the merger, Alex as Alexa, her presence now a golden key that opened any door, arranged to visit. The Alchemist had already cleared the way, overriding the facility's strict privacy protocols with a single, untraceable phone call. He was led to a private wing. The room at the end of the hall was simple, clean, and sterile. A woman was sitting in a wheelchair by the window, looking out at a small, manicured garden. She was painfully thin, her body frail, but the late afternoon sun caught the unmistakable glint of dark, Valerius hair, threaded with premature silver. "Helena," Alex said, and his Alexa voice was a fragile, trembling thing. The woman turned. Her face was a beautiful, tragic echo of his own mother's. She had the same high cheekbones, the same intelligent eyes. But her eyes were clouded with a deep, weary resignation. And she had the same subtle, telltale tremors in her hands that he had seen in his father. She was his sister. And she was dying. "You are not my father," she said, her voice a soft, cultured whisper, a voice honed by years of Swiss education and isolation. "No," Alex replied, his heart aching. "My name is Alexa. I am Richard Valerius's daughter." The lie felt obscene in this room of profound, terrible truth. A flicker of something disbelief? Bitter amusement crossed Helena's face. "Are you now?" He seems to have acquired one late in life. What a surprise. She looked him up and down, her gaze sharp and analytical, just like their father's. "You have my mother's eyes. I have seen them in the one photograph he allows me." They talked for over an hour. Helena, starved for conversation with someone other than her silent, guilt-ridden father, spoke of her life at the orphanage, a place of cold comfort and endless questions. She spoke of her release at 18, of a brief, hopeful few years of freedom in Paris, where she studied art, before the first symptoms had appeared. And then, their father had reappeared, not with an apology, but with a diagnosis and this quiet, white room. "He told me the truth," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "He told me about our grandfather. About the curse. He said this was for my own protection. To keep the family's secret safe. He said it was his penance, his duty, to care for me in secret, just as he had hidden me away in secret." Alex felt a surge of rage so intense it made him dizzy. This wasn't protection. This was a life sentence. "Did he ever tell you," Alex asked, his voice shaking, "that our mother died believing you were a stillborn?" The cool composure on Helena's face finally cracked. A single, silent tear traced a path down her cheek. "No," she whispered. "He did not." It was in that moment that Alex knew his mission had changed again. It was no longer about justice, or even about freedom. It was about rage. It was about vengeance. He left the facility, his mind a storm of grief and fury. He had the truth. He had the weapon. And he knew exactly how he was going to use it. The merger, the company, his own identity, it was all just collateral damage now. He was going to burn his father's precious legacy to the ground. He made 2 calls. The first was to Leo. "I found her," he said, his voice ragged. "And it's worse than we could have imagined. I need your help. It's time to tell your aunt the truth." The second call was to his father. "The merger agreement is ready to be signed," Alexa's voice said, cool and perfect. "Isabel Rossi has requested a final, Formal signing ceremony. At her private estate. She wants both of our families present to symbolize the new partnership. It was a lie, a trap. But he knew his father, blinded by his impending victory, would walk right into it. Isabel Rossi's private estate was a magnificent old villa surrounded by acres of ancient, manicured gardens. The signing ceremony was to be held in the Grand Library, a room of dark wood, soaring ceilings, and the weight of old-world power. The atmosphere was thick with a tense, triumphant energy. On one side of the massive oak table sat Richard Valerius, looking frail but with a feverish, victorious gleam in his eyes. Beside him, a vision of corporate elegance in a charcoal-gray suit, sat his masterpiece, his daughter, Alexa. On the other side sat Isabel Rossi, radiating a cool, matriarchal authority. Beside her sat her nephew and trusted advisor, Leo. The lawyers, two on each side, hovered in the background, the thick, leather-bound merger agreements laid out on the table like sacred texts. A historic day, Richard rasped, his voice a dry rustle of paper. The joining of two great houses. A new legacy secured by the next generation. His gaze rested on Alexa with a look of profound, proprietary pride. Indeed, Isabel replied, her own eyes on Alexa, but with a look of genuine, mentoring affection. A legacy built on a foundation of strength and truth. I am proud to be in business with a woman of your caliber, Alexa. Alex felt a pang of guilt. Isabel's respect was real, but it was directed at a phantom. He glanced at Leo, who gave a brief, almost imperceptible nod. The plan was in motion. Before we sign, Alex said, and Alexa's cool, clear voice filled the silent room. There is one final detail of the Valerius legacy I feel must be shared. A story of the true strength of the Valerius women. Richard frowned, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face at this deviation from the script. Isabel, however, leaned forward, intrigued. My father has spoken of his genetic inheritance, Alex continued, his gaze steady. A tragic flaw passed down through the men of our family. He presented me as the solution. A daughter immune to the curse. He paused, letting the silence stretch. But that story, like so many stories in the world of business, is not the complete truth. He reached into the sleek leather portfolio in front of him. But he didn't pull out a pen. He pulled out a tablet. With a single tap, the large screen on the library wall, which had been displaying the logos of the two companies, flickered to life. An image appeared on the screen. It was a live video feed from a clean, white room. A frail, beautiful woman with dark hair was sitting in a wheelchair, looking directly into the camera. It was Helena. This, Alex said, his voice ringing with a cold, clear fury, is my older sister, Helena Valerius. The first Valerius daughter. The one my father and my grandfather hid from the world because she, too, carried their flaw. The one they let our mother die believing was a stillborn. A collective gasp went through the room. Richard Valerius went rigid, his face turning a ghastly shade of white. Isabel Rossi stared at the screen, then at Alexa, then back at the screen, her mind clearly struggling to process the impossible revelation. My father did not need to create a daughter to save his company, Alex continued, his voice rising, the carefully constructed Alexa persona beginning to crack. He already had one. He just kept her locked away in a gilded cage, a secret shame, while he built his empire. He stood up, his hands flat on the table. And then, he looked directly at Isabel Rossi, and for the first time, he let his own voice, his own deep, masculine voice, filled with a righteous, burning rage, cut through the artifice. He didn't just lie to you, Isabel. He built his entire legacy on a foundation of lies. And he used me, his son, as the final, most monstrous lie of all. The revelation, delivered in Alex's own, raw, masculine voice, shattered the carefully constructed reality of the room. It was not just a plot twist, it was a detonation. Richard Valerius let out a strangled, gasping sound. He tried to stand, to protest, but his frail body betrayed him. He collapsed back into his chair, his face a mask of horrified disbelief, his legacy turning to ash before his very eyes. Isabel Rossi, however, did not collapse. After a moment of stunned, frozen silence, her expression hardened into one of pure, glacial fury. The matriarch, the woman who despised male ego and incompetence above all else, had just been played for a fool in the most audacious, insulting way imaginable. She had been charmed by a phantom, ready to merge her empire with a house built on a lie she found philosophically repugnant. She rose slowly to her feet, her gaze fixed not on Alex, but on the broken man opposite her. "Richard," she said, her voice a low, deadly whisper that cut through the room. "You are a monster. And a fool. You have not just insulted me. You have insulted my entire worldview." She turned to her lawyers. "The deal is off. All deals. I want a full-scale assault. I want you to initiate a hostile takeover of Valerius Industries by morning. I will not buy his company. I will gut it. I will sell it for parts. I will erase the Valerius name from the face of the earth." She then looked at Alex, at the man in the beautiful woman's clothes. There was no sympathy in her eyes, only a cold, clinical assessment. "And you," she said, "are a casualty of a war you did not start. But you are still a lie. Get out of my house." The meeting dissolved into chaos. The lawyers began shouting. Richard was having difficulty breathing. The alchemist, who had been observing from a discreet corner, simply turned and walked silently out of the room, her mission a catastrophic failure, her creation having gone rogue. In the midst of the mayhem, Leo came to Alex's side. "Come on," he said, his voice a calm anchor in the storm. "Let's go." He led Alex out of the library, through a side door, and into the cool, quiet of the villa's gardens. Alex was still trembling, the adrenaline of his confession warring with the crushing weight of what he had just done. He had won. He had exposed his father. But he had also signed the death warrant for the company, for the legacy he had been sent to save. He had freed himself, but had potentially ruined the lives of thousands of employees. "I destroyed everything," Alex whispered, sinking onto a stone bench, the elegant gray suit of Alexa feeling like a ridiculous, mocking costume. "No," Leo said, sitting beside him. "You told the truth. The truth is what destroyed it. It was already rotten to the core." He looked at Alex, at the man whose music he had recognized from the very beginning. "The question is," Leo said gently, "what do you do now?" Before Alex could answer, his phone buzzed. It was a single, encrypted text from a number he didn't recognize. The message was brief, but it changed the equation once again. "He lied to me too. The mission was a lie. I am retasking. Go to the rendezvous point. We are not finished." It was from the Alchemist. The rendezvous point was a place of ghosts and new beginnings, the empty, echoing shell of the high-tech facility where Alex's transformation had begun. He went alone, telling Leo he needed to finish this himself. The alchemist was waiting for him in the same sterile, white room where they had first met. She was standing in front of a large screen, which displayed a complex, cascading series of financial data and legal documents. "Your father's deception was more layered than I anticipated," she said, her voice devoid of emotion, but with an undercurrent of something that sounded like professional fury. "My contract was to preserve the Valerius legacy. He defined that legacy as the company. That was a misdirection. The true legacy, the one he has been protecting at all costs, is the secret of the genetic disease." She pointed to the screen. "Isabel Rossi's takeover is proceeding. In 48 hours, she will own Valerius Industries. But in her haste for revenge, she is acquiring the company's assets, not its liabilities. Your father, in a final, brilliant move of self-preservation, is using a series of shell corporations to absorb all the company's debt, while also protecting his own personal fortune. When Rossi takes over, she will be acquiring a hollowed-out shell. Your father will declare personal bankruptcy, his reputation will be ruined, but his wealth, his real wealth will be insulated. He lied to me. He used my skills not to save his company, but to orchestrate its artful dissolution while protecting his own secrets. This," she said, her voice dropping, "is an unacceptable breach of contract." Alex stared at her, stunned by the sheer, cold-blooded genius of his father's final act. "So he still wins," Alex said, a bitter taste in his mouth. Not necessarily, the alchemist replied. He has one vulnerability. You. She turned to face him. He believes he has destroyed you. He has no idea that you were the one variable he could not control. I am offering you a new contract, Alex. Not as a client, but as a partner. A partner in what? Reclamation, she said, a flicker of a predatory smile on her face. Rossi wants the company. Your father wants his secrets. Your sister deserves a life. And you deserve a future. There is a way to achieve all of these things. But it will require a final performance. One that is more audacious than anything you have done before. And this time, you will not be playing a part one have created. You will be playing a part you were born for. She tapped a key, and the screen behind her changed. It now displayed a single, beautifully rendered digital portrait. It was the face of Alexa Valerius. But underneath, the title was different. It didn't say heiress or daughter. It said CEO. Isabel Rossi respects one thing, a powerful, intelligent woman, the alchemist explained. She is about to acquire a company with no leadership. We are going to give her one. We are going to leak a story. The story of Alexa Valerius, the brilliant, reclusive daughter, who, upon discovering her father's monstrous lies, orchestrated his downfall from the inside, seizing control of the company's key assets before Rossi's takeover, and is now positioning herself as the only person who can lead Valerius Industries out of the ashes. That's insane, Alex breathed. Rossi will never believe it. She saw me. She knows I'm a man. She saw a performer, the alchemist corrected him. She has no idea how deep the performance goes. She will not see a man in a dress. She will see a woman so cunning, so ruthless, that she was willing to use her own brother as a pawn to dethrone her father. She will see a reflection of herself. And she will respect it. She looked at him, her eyes sharp and challenging. The question is, Alex, after everything you have been through, are you still in there? Or is Alexa ready to run a company? Alex returned to the penthouse, a place that now felt less like a cage and more like a command center. He stood before the mirror, not as a prisoner, but as a general contemplating his final battle. The alchemist's plan was insane, a high-wire act with no safety net. But it was also a perfect, poetic form of justice. He wouldn't just be playing a part, he would be wielding it as a weapon. The hormonal regimen, which he had stopped after the signing ceremony, was restarted. But this time, it was his choice. It was a conscious decision, a tool he needed for the role ahead. The alchemist's team, now his team, began the reinhabitation, but with a different focus. This was not about creating a soft, plausible woman. This was about creating a CEO. The wardrobe changed. The elegant, severe dresses were replaced with powerful, razor-sharp pantsuits, impeccably tailored blouses, and shoes with a lower, more practical, but no less authoritative heel. The makeup became bolder, more defined, a strong lip, a sharp, clean eye. It was the armor of a woman who was not afraid to be seen, a woman who commanded attention. His training was no longer about deportment, it was about dominance. He practiced in mock boardrooms, learning how to command a room, how to interrupt without apologizing, how to wield silence as a weapon. He was not just inhabiting Alexa, he was upgrading her. He was pouring all of his own rage, his newfound strength, and his cold, analytical intelligence into her. He also made a secret visit. With Leo's help, he went to see his sister, Helena. He walked into her white room, not as the conflicted, whispery Alexa, but as the powerful, confident CEO. He told her everything. The plan. The final gambit. Helena listened, her intelligent eyes, so much like his own, watching him. You would do that, she whispered, a new, fragile hope in her voice. You would become her, for me? I would become her for us, he corrected her gently. Our father and grandfather built an empire on our family's suffering. It's time we took it back. When this is over, you will have the best doctors in the world. You will have a life outside this room. I swear it. It was a promise. A contract sealed not with a signature, but with a shared, desperate hope. The day of the final Valerius Industries board meeting, the one where Isabel Rossi's team would formally take control, Alexa Valerius walked into the room. A wave of shock and confusion rippled through the assembled executives. What is the meaning of this? Rossi's lead lawyer demanded. I am Alexa Valerius, she said, her voice cool and commanding, ringing with an authority that silenced the room. And as the majority shareholder of the key subsidiary assets, which were transferred to my control last week, I believe I am the new chair of this board. You are welcome to audit the paperwork. It is, I assure you, impeccable. Isabel Rossi, watching via a live video feed, stared at the screen. She saw the same face, the same woman. But this was not the gentle, artistic Alexa she had mentored. This was a predator. A woman who had, in the space of a week, outmaneuvered not only her dying, brilliant father, but Isabel's own team of ruthless lawyers. The alchemist had been right. Isabel didn't see a lie. She saw a reflection of her own ambition, magnified and perfected. She saw a woman she could do business with. She saw a queen. A slow, dangerous smile spread across Isabel Rossi's face. This was getting interesting. The boardroom became a battlefield, but the war was over before it began. Alexa, armed with the alchemist's flawless legal maneuvering and her own newfound icy resolve, was untouchable. She didn't just have control of the company's most valuable, debt-free assets. She had a story, a powerful, irresistible narrative that the alchemist was already carefully leaking to the financial press. The story of the hidden daughter, the ruthless father, and the brilliant, cold-blooded coup. Isabel Rossi, recognizing a fellow predator, did not fight. She adapted. The hostile takeover was abandoned. Instead, she proposed a strategic partnership, an alliance between two powerful matriarchs. She would provide the capital and the market access. Alexa would provide the innovation and the narrative. It was a deal born not of trust, but of mutual, predatory respect. Richard Valerius, watching from the sidelines, trapped in his decaying body, was forced to witness his own checkmate. His plan to salvage his fortune had been hijacked. His son, his final, desperate pawn, had transformed into the queen that had taken his entire board. His secrets were out, his reputation was shattered, and his company was now in the hands of the two women he had underestimated. He died 2 weeks later, a king with no kingdom. Alex's life was now a permanent, high-stakes performance. He was Alexa Valerius, CEO, a rising star in the corporate world. He lived in the penthouse, he wore the power suits, he commanded boardrooms. He fulfilled his promise to his sister. Helena was moved to a world-class private medical facility, her care overseen by the best doctors money could buy. For the first time, she had a life beyond the White Room, with visitors, art therapy, and the quiet, constant presence of the sibling she had never known. But the victory came at a profound, personal cost. The hormonal therapy was no longer temporary, it was a necessary part of maintaining the role. The physical changes, once subtle, were becoming more pronounced. His body was softening, rounding, conforming to the identity he wore every day. The voice, the posture, the mindset of Alexa were no longer an act. They were becoming his default state. His relationship with Leo was the one place he could still, occasionally, be Alex. They would meet in secret, in quiet galleries or late-night cafes. Leo was his confessor, his anchor to a self that was rapidly receding. "Do you ever miss it?" Leo asked him one night, as they looked at a painting. "The piano?" "There's no time," Alex replied, his voice the soft, melodic alto of Alexa, a voice that was now more natural to him than his own. "And my hands, they're not the same." He looked at his own hands, now smooth and slender, the calluses and strength of the musician long gone. "The merger saved thousands of jobs," Leo said gently. "You gave your sister a life. You built something real out of your father's lies." "Alexa built that," he corrected him. "I just provided the raw material." The duality was tearing him apart. He was a hero to his sister, a genius to the business world, but to himself, he was a ghost. He had won the war, but he was losing himself in the peace that followed. He was the most powerful and the loneliest man and woman in the world. He had mastered the performance so completely that he was no longer sure where the actor ended and the role began. 2 years passed. Alexa Valerius was a titan and icon. She had not just saved Valerius Industries, she had transformed it, merging its industrial might with Isabel Rossi's market savvy to create a global powerhouse. She was ruthless, brilliant, and admired. She was also a complete fabrication, and the man inside was starting to come apart at the seams. The hormonal therapy had rendered the transformation permanent. Alex's body was, for all intents and purposes, female. The low, rumbling voice of his youth was a distant memory, the muscle and sinew replaced by a softer, more delicate form. The disguise was no longer a disguise, it was simply his body. The crack appeared, as it often does, in a moment of unexpected beauty. He was in Milan for a business meeting. Walking back to his hotel one evening, he passed a small, dimly lit jazz club. From within, he heard the sound of a piano, a soulful, improvisational melody that was so full of life, so full of authentic, messy emotion, that it stopped him in his tracks. He went inside. He sat at a small table in the back, a silent, elegant woman in a perfectly tailored suit. He watched the pianist, a young man whose eyes were closed in passionate concentration, his fingers dancing across the keys. And Alex felt a pain so profound, so visceral, it was like a physical wound. It was a grief for a life he had lost, for the man he used to be, for the music he no longer had the hands or the soul to play. He was no longer just playing a role. The role had consumed him. He had sacrificed his own identity on the altar of his father's legacy, and in saving it, he had annihilated himself. He flew back the next day, not to his penthouse, but to the long-term care facility. He walked into Helena's room. His sister, while still frail, was stronger. The new treatments had slowed the progression of the disease. She was sitting up, sketching in a notebook, the life back in her eyes. "Alexa," she said, her voice filled with a warmth that always soothed him. He sat beside her, the carefully constructed composure of the CEO crumbling. "I can't do it anymore, Helena," he whispered, and the voice that came out was a broken, desperate sound. I'm disappearing. I don't know who I am anymore." He told her everything. About the piano in Milan, about the ghost of the man he used to be, about the profound, crushing loneliness of his gilded cage. Helena listened, her expression full of a deep, sorrowful empathy. She reached out and took his smooth, soft hand. "You saved me, Alex," she said, using his real name for the first time in years. The name was a shock, a memory of a forgotten self. "You gave me a life. Now, it's time for you to have one too." "But how?" he asked, his voice raw. "Alexa is all there is. She runs the company. She pays for this." "The company is not a legacy," Helena said, her voice filled with a quiet, Valerius strength he had never heard before. "It's a machine built on our family's pain. Maybe it's time to turn it off." She squeezed his hand. "You don't have to be a CEO. You don't have to be Alexa. You don't have to be a man. You just have to be you. Whoever that is now. We'll figure it out. Together." It was a permission slip. A release from the role he had been forced to play, and then had chosen to perfect. He looked at his sister, the other survivor of their father's cruel legacy, and for the first time, he saw a future that wasn't defined by Valerius Industries, by Isabel Rossi, or by the ghost of Alexa. It was a terrifying, unknown, and wonderfully blank page. The dismantling of a corporate icon is a quiet and complex affair. It took 6 months. With Helena as his silent, unwavering partner, Alex began the final, most important negotiation of his life, the negotiation for his own soul. He did not disappear overnight. Instead, with the secret, expert guidance of the Alchemist, who, in a final, unexpected act of loyalty, agreed to manage the sunsetting of the brand, Alexa Valerius began a strategic retreat. She promoted a talented female executive from within the company to be her successor. She systematically transferred her controlling shares into a blind trust, with 2 beneficiaries, a fund for research into genetic diseases, and a perpetual, anonymous endowment for Helena's care. She sold the penthouse. She divested herself from the company she had saved. The business world was baffled by the brilliant CEO's sudden, quiet exit from the stage, but the Alchemist's narrative was, as always, flawless. Alexa Valerius was retiring from public life to pursue her private passions, her legacy secure. The final public act was a joint press conference with Isabel Rossi to announce the leadership transition. Isabel, now an older, wiser matriarch, stood beside Alexa. She knew, not all the details, but enough. She had seen the profound weariness in Alexa's eyes and had, in a rare moment of compassion, agreed to help facilitate the quiet exit. Some legacies, Isabel said to the press, her gaze briefly meeting Alex's, are not about what you build, but what you have the courage to let go of. When it was all done, Alex was left with a strange new kind of freedom. He was no longer a CEO. He was no longer a prisoner. He was a person in a body that had been irrevocably changed, with a modest but comfortable fortune and a future that was a complete unknown. He didn't try to become Alex again. That man was a ghost, a memory from a different life. The hormones had sculpted his body, the experience had sculpted his soul. To go back would be just another performance. Instead, she moved into a quiet, sunlit apartment in a city known for its music. She started using a new name, one that felt like a quiet harmony between the two halves of her past, Elian. She bought a piano, a beautiful old Steinway grand. Her hands were not the powerful, masculine hands of Alex the pianist. They were the slender, graceful hands of Elian. The music she played was different now. It was less angry, less passionate. It was quieter, more complex, filled with a bittersweet wisdom. It was the music of a survivor. Her sister, Helena, now stable and able to travel, came to live in a small house nearby. They were the only two members of a family they were redefining on their own terms. Leo, the musicologist who had seen the truth from the very beginning, became a frequent visitor, a quiet, constant friend who loved Elian for the beautiful, complicated person she was, not for the man she had been. One afternoon, Helena and Leo were sitting in the living room, listening as Elian played. The music was a new composition, a piece that was both melancholic and hopeful, a symphony that was still being written. Helena smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile. "You sound happy," she said. Elian finished the phrase, the final note hanging in the air like a question mark. She looked at her reflection in the polished black lacquer of the piano. She saw a face that was neither wholly male nor wholly female, a face that held the stories of both Alex and Alexa. For the first time, she didn't see a stranger. She saw herself. "I'm not happy," she said, a small, true smile on her lips. "And I'm not sad. I'm just here. And for the first time in a very long time, that's enough." She placed her hands back on the keys, ready to write the next movement of her own, unfinished symphony.